Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Corey Voss. I'm Marketing Event Manager at Logical Position. And sitting next to me is Lindsay Steer, the General Manager at Logical Position. And in that window over there is Carly Horn. And I'll let you two introduce yourselves.
Perfect. Hey, everybody. I'm Lindsay Steer. As Corey mentioned, I'm the General Manager for Logical Positions headquarter office here in Portland, Oregon. Basically, Logical Positions an SEM company. We specialize in search engine optimization, PPC management, social, and we particularly have an emphasis with e-commerce websites. We're a Google Premier partner, an elite Bing Elite Ads partner, and have a lot of different industry partnerships with e-commerce sites to help provide the best results we can for our clients.
Awesome. And I'm Carly Horn. I'm the VP of Partnerships for North America for Loyalty Lion. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have our headquarters in London. And so Loyalty Lion, we provide fast growth e-commerce stores with a fully customizable loyalty program that's designed to increase customer engagement, retention, and lifetime value.
Great. So today we're going to go over some best practices. We're going to turn our webcams off first. We're going to go over some best practices to bring in more customers and keep them coming back. We'll go over estimating return in AdWords, structuring your campaigns with non-brand and brand intent, calculating lifetime value and common issues to avoid in your PPC strategy. And then Carly will walk us through building that customer loyalty through post-purchase strategies that move folks from at-risk to repeat customers. And just as a reminder, you all have a little sidebar on your screen. So if you have any questions, please type it in there and we will address those at the end. And we will be recording this webinar. So if you miss anything, don't worry. We'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording and contact info if you need a one-on-one follow-up. And with that, take it away, Lindsay.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Corey. So the first thing that I really wanted to address in this webinar is just kind of PPC viability for different types of companies. I'm sure that some of you all have previously worked with PPC in the past, maybe had a negative experience with it or hopefully a positive experience. The reason why I'm going to kind of focus on that in terms of new client acquisition is just like I mentioned, we work in SEO, we work in web design, we work in social, but for clients starting out, we really do use PPC as the starting point. The reason being is because it is instantaneous, it's nimble, it's customizable. And what we find is that it really is the best way to aggregate data for kind of new advertisers as well as existing advertisers. So what I wanted to talk about first are kind of three basic things that you really need to know about your company and your product in order to be able to, identify PPC's viability. So the first of those is going to be organic conversion rate. For those of you guys who maybe aren't as familiar about where to find that, you can go to Google Analytics, you can go to conversions and go to e-commerce tracking, and I hope that you all have that set up. Then within e-commerce tracking, you can look at the organic conversion rate. The reason why we kind of like to start with this is that sometimes PPC conversion rates are higher, sometimes they're lower. But the benefit with the PPC advertising is that we can target specific types of products. So often we will see that PPC conversion rates are pretty in line with organic. If you don't have information on your website's conversion rate, maybe you don't have your transaction goals set up, you don't have e-commerce tracking set up, you can kind of ballpark for the sake of the equations that we're going to work through. I'd recommend maybe starting with a ballpark between 1.5% to 2.5%. Sometimes, again, it's much, much higher. Sometimes it's much lower. It just kind of depends. The next thing that's important to have knowledge of is your average order value. Again, you can actually find this information in the same place in Google Analytics, as you can see on the screenshot. If you don't have that available in Google Analytics either, you can ballpark it as well. I'm sure you know what sort of price point your products fall into. And then the third thing that's really important for estimating your PPC viability is your product margin information. So, usually retailers are going to be somewhere around 35%, maybe less, depending on how many times the margin kind of gets stepped on through the supply chain process. Manufacturers and brands are typically going to be higher, 50% or sometimes even more, just depending again on how close you are to the origination of a product. So once you have kind of those 3 different points of information, the next place that I always like to go to, kind of help assess viability is going to be the Google AdWords Keyword Planner. Some of you guys might be familiar with this tool. It's a free tool provided by Google that shows you things like average monthly searches, level of competition of PPC advertisers on a particular term, as well as estimates on cost per click. The thing to know is that this is all just kind of information. It's not going to, necessarily be 100% accurate. So what I like to have my clients do is, basically pick out different keywords that are going to be related to product categories. So let's say you're an apparel retailer. Maybe that's something like North Face jackets, Burton hoodies, things like that. And then you can kind of get together just a small list of things that represent your different products and categories. And then what you want to do is find kind of an average CPC across those different search terms. Really what this exercise is figuring out how much traffic you can get to your website within your particular budget. If we're talking about e-commerce sites, we recommend a budget no smaller than $1,000 per month for pay-per-click. If you are in a hyper-competitive vertical, it's probably going to need to be much more than that. But if you have your budget and then you can look at your average CPC, then we can basically move forward to the next step, which is how to calculate the theoretical amount of traffic to your site within PPC. So again, you've got your monthly budget, you've got your CPC, and what you're going to do is divide the budget by CPC, and that's going to get you the number of potential site visitors that you can aggregate within that budget. So this is actually a screenshot from a client account. This was, what has happened. So they spent $6,753 at an average CPC of 76 cents, and they were able to bring in 8,900 website visitors. So, look at your budget, look at the CPC, figure out how many people you can bring to the site within those kind of different constraints. So once you have the number of theoretical site visitors you can drum up through PPC, then what you want to do is look at that conversion rate to figure out the number of transactions that you can generate through this new acquisition channel. Again, I used a client account as an example. So we have 8,900 site visitors. They happen to have a conversion rate at 4.46%. And what that was able to yield was 397 transactions within their budget with the CPC constraints. So this is where, again, average order value comes into play. If you know how many transactions you're getting to the website and you know what the average order value of those transactions are, you can calculate what your gross revenue, theoretically would be running this acquisition channel. So, in this example, at $137 AOV for average order value, that yielded $54,435 in gross revenue. So now there is one more step, because as we all know, gross revenue does not equal net profit, and that's where your margin's going to come into play. So if we have the revenue that you could theoretically aggregate through the channel, and then your margin, you can multiply those things together to figure out what the net profit would be. And then you want to minus out the cost of the actual advertising. So in this case, the advertiser, again, was able to aggregate $54,000 in revenue, and then we take out what they're paying in COGS basically, and then also subtracting what they paid to acquire that traffic to their website, and that resulted in a net profit of $20,736. So what I would really encourage you all to do is play around with these numbers, play around with different budgets, play around with different conversion rates, and really figure out what your worst case scenario is going to be, your best case scenario is going to be, and your break even. And that kind of gives you a nice, if you will, zone of, kind of possible profitability that you can then use the strategies and AdWords to orient around. So, lifetime value. The reason I wanted to talk about this, Carly's going to go a lot more in depth into lifetime value, but the reason why we're talking about it in terms of new acquisition is that lifetime value is incredibly important for setting those goals on what you're willing to pay for a new client acquisition. So some people, a lot of the clients that I've spoken with at least, have struggled with where to find information about the lifetime value of their clients. And I don't think any of these data sources are necessarily a silver bullet about exactly what your lifetime value is. But some of the common places that we'll look towards to find information on that subject is going to be a client CRM. So for example, Salesforce, HubSpot, they do a very good job of being able to run a report on, a particular person's lifetime value. Also, your different content management systems have that built in. Shopify does a pretty good job. They have some reports you can run. Payment processors are also a great place to go because people are putting in their credit card information, and that can also be mapped. And then of course, Loyalty Lion and other loyalty programs typically provide this information, seeing as that's the value that they're bringing to their clients. So just a kind of quick side note on the equation for lifetime value. What that's going to look like is your average order value times the number of repeat sales times your retention, and that's going to equal lifetime. So, you can kind of look at this over different time frames and things like that. But if you have a really high repeat rate, that can definitely afford more of an opportunity to take a loss up front in order to drive higher revenue numbers on the back end. We actually had a client that we worked with who was in the gift industry, if you will, so gift baskets, things like that. And based on their lifetime value, it made the most sense for them to lose a substantial amount of money up front on new client acquisition because their lifetime revenue was so high once they got that person in the door. So it is going to change the orientation of, how you're viewing your account, how you're maneuvering your account, and your spend between brand and non-brand when you have that understanding of what a new client really does mean to you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about brand and non-brand and some of the differences between the two, and again, how we orient strategy. Talking specifically about brand, there are typically two schools of thought when it comes to PPC branded advertising. So that's advertising on your own branded term. So for example, logical position, advertising on the search term logical position. So one school of thought is don't do it. It's traffic you're going to get organically anyway. Why would you pay for that? The other school of thought is that you should absolutely do it because there are, a lot of kind of intangibles and tangibles that come with it. We're definitely the latter. So we actually do the PPC for the Dallas Cowboys, and we had some conversations back and forth about if we should or should not run brand. So what that actually did was we decided to create some blackout tests in some different markets to see what the effect was of when we were running brand versus when we were not running brand. And in the markets where we weren't running brand, we actually saw a 10% drop in revenue. So that means that that's revenue that obviously was being lost to other competitors or other sources and things of that nature. So now if we're going to talk about the differences between running on your brand and your non-brand, non-brand is going to be obviously things that don't include your particular branded terms. So for example, if I am an apparel retailer, it's going to be kind of those new acquisition type searches. Somebody who's looking for, say, a North Face down jacket, or somebody who's looking for a pair of Nike shoes, or whatever it might be. Non-brand is always going to be more costly than brand, just because you don't own the terms and they're more competitive. However, non-brand is incredibly profitable because, like we mentioned, it is typically new client acquisition. So those are people you can get into the door to continue purchasing your product and nurture over time. So generally speaking, you should absolutely be running both. But if we have clients that are budget constrained, we will typically opt for brand first to generate the most amount of revenue to then move into the non-brand category. So just a side note on running on brand. This is just an example I wanted to show everybody of Hunter boots. You guys may or may not be familiar with them, but they are a brand of rain boots. They do sell direct through their website, and they do run quite a bit of pay-per-click advertising in the non-brand arena. But this was a search I conducted on their branded term, and you'll notice that they're nowhere on the page. Zappos is there, Moose Jaw, ShopBop, Shoes.com. So these are 4 different places that are going to be getting that revenue that Hunter Boots is now not getting by not employing this strategy. So talking about profitable PPC and where to start, I already kind of addressed this first point here, but if I have a client who comes to me and says, Lindsay, I've been running pay-per-click, it hasn't been working, what should we do? This is the typical kind of advice that I would give them, and that is number one, let's start on the Google search network on your branded terms. So again, in that example, previously Hunter Boots was not doing that. We're going to start here because it's low-hanging fruit at a very low cost with very high revenue. These are people who are already familiar with your brand. They're actively searching for your brand, so you should be there as a top option so that they don't go to, say, Target or some other, potential retailer. The next area that we would focus on after we've maximized brand potential is going to be Google Shopping. And most of you guys are going to be very familiar with this network. As you can see over here in this little screenshot, it's where you have not only the image of the ad, the description of the product, but you also have the cost. So it's a great way to pre-qualify traffic before they ever even click on your ad. So these typically have really high conversion rates, and they're usually a pretty low cost. And just kind of a side note, a fun fact about Google Shopping is that 80% of the initial product clicks actually go in and purchase a different product from the store. And that's something that we can actually track because of the way that we set up our shopping accounts. So it's just really interesting information to see what gets a lot of click viability, but then what ultimately ends up in that purchase. So the third area that we would move into, based again on return numbers, is going to be what we call RLSA, which stands for remarketing lists for search and shopping ads. You can do it for search or for shopping. A lot of people are familiar with remarketing on the display network, which are graphic ads that follow you around to different websites. What's different about these types of campaigns is that in RLSA, you can actually target people who have been to your website through the search network or through the shopping network. So again, if you have a handful of people that have abandoned the shopping cart, those are people that we can re-engage on these high intent networks to pull back to the website. We also like to segment out our remarketing into kind of different buckets. So for instance, one of those is going to be duration. So we can take non-converters and we can message them within the first 24 hours in a very specific way. And that might look a lot different than somebody who, say, abandoned the shopping cart a month ago. They might require a different type of messaging to re-engage. And lastly, where we would go would be the non-brand Google search specific to long-tailed search terms. So again, I've had a client that was in a very competitive industry, children's apparel. And when we went in and looked at their account, most of what they were doing in their non-brand acquisition was these very kind of general categorical type searches like children's apparel, apparel for children. So what we did is we came in and we kind of inverted that strategy. And we went after much more specific types of product searches that have a way higher likelihood of converting in the account. If you think about every time you're paying for a click on something like children's apparel, that's budget that you don't have available for the search term Dr. Seuss kids pajamas, which is something significantly more specific with a way higher likelihood of converting. So in this particular account, basically in year over year, when we enacted this strategy, we saw a 60% increase in revenue, which is pretty astronomical. Sorry, getting over a cold over here. So in terms of profitable PPC, one of the most important things to high return on ad spend is campaign structure. The general rule of thumb is that you should section out your campaigns as granularly as possible because there are a lot of different settings at the campaign level that really influence profitability. So I wanted to give an example of a way that you could segment, say, your shopping network campaigns. So one way that you might want to segment that is going to be by, is it a brand or a non-brand campaign? Are the search terms or the products that you're going to have in there going to be based around either of those two areas? Because those are going to take different budgets, different ad delivery methods and things of that nature. So down here, if we're talking about maybe the brand's REI, we would have REI as one element of that campaign segmentation. Another layer to that is going to be, the audience or the, I guess kind of category of the product. So are we talking about, men's REI products, children's REI products, in this case, women's? And then another layer to add to that is what category of REI women's are we talking about? Is it accessories or is it apparel? And then another layer that you can add into that is what type of apparel is this campaign going to house? So in this case, we have branded, women's apparel, and specifically jackets. So everything that's going to fall under this campaign is going to fall under those different umbrellas. And what that's going to do is allow us to collect really, really clean data in the account. And it's also going to give us the ability to push and pull different products very specifically to increase return on ad spend. So I'm going to show you guys two different examples here. This first one is something I see often. So if I hop into an account, and especially if they're running shopping, and I see that there's one campaign with one ad group with all of the products housed under that one particular campaign, that is a huge red flag. And the biggest reason, as you can see here, is that, that's $150 a day budget that's running across all different product categories and products in general that are going to have different margins, different revenue numbers, and you're not going to be able to optimize this campaign towards highest return when everything's looped together like that. I guess an analogy you could kind of think of is it would be like trying to drive a car with just a stop and a go button. Like, yes, you might make it to your end destination, but it's going to be dicey as best. So here is a much better example of how to section out your campaign structure. So as I mentioned previously, what we have here is an indication of, what product category is this and what specific products are we looking at within those product categories. You can't see it all from here, but I think that this one has about 25 different shopping campaigns. There are some brand, there are some non-brand, they're designated as such. So again, we can isolate budget, we can isolate settings, and we really can maneuver those products in a much better and specific way to increase return on ad spend with a structure like this. So in summary, another analogy that I like to use that I think is really apt for PPC is that you can build this beautiful, incredible website, which is essentially your main event. Right? You want people to get to the website, have a good time, enjoy themselves. But if you're not using some sort of invitation to invite people to your event, then you're not really going to have a good turnout or any turnout at all. So, you really do need to be up in front of this very intent-based audience that's actively searching for your types of products. But the key is just understanding some of those nuances about how much are you willing to pay for new client acquisition, and what does that client mean to you over the lifetime of the account? And then the second part of that is obviously structuring the account and customizing the settings to really hone in on that intent. You can be incredibly specific with PPC and you can allocate very little to it, but that's at least going to provide you an acquisition channel that you're not otherwise going to have without it. So as always, you guys are welcome to contact me after the webinar so I can answer specific questions, but I'm going to hand it over to Carly to talk now about once you have those customers, how do you really increase their value?
Awesome, thank you. Awesome. So that was great, and definitely learned a lot. So really enjoyed watching that. So now that we've talked a lot about how you're going to get your customers in the door, how you're going to get them familiar with your brand, get them shopping with you, but let's talk a little bit now about how you keep them coming back. So one of the best ways to get your customers returning to you and shopping with you frequently is by building loyalty with them throughout their life cycle as a customer with you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the customer life cycle and dive, pretty deeply into some strategies, to help move a customer to being a loyal customer. But after you've gotten them to make that first purchase, there's still a lot of work to be done in order, to convert those customers into a loyal customer. So if a customer is purchasing with you often and for a long time, they can be classified as loyal. When you have a loyalty program in place, after that first purchase is made, you can use points or other rewards, to reward on actions that are being taken and encourage a customer to come back and make another purchase with you and continue to repeat that purchase. And with a program like Loyalty Lion or any other loyalty platform that you may be using, we can help a customer understand when someone's at risk and make it really easy to re-engage with that customer and get them back. So just because a customer makes a repeat purchase doesn't necessarily mean that they're a loyal customer, But this is a really important statistic that after a customer has made that first purchase, they have a 27% chance of making a repeat purchase. And after that second purchase, that goes up to 45%. So it's really valuable. And this is all information that is available in a program like Loyalty Line. So you can see all the statistics behind every customer. And it's extremely valuable to know your repeat purchase rate because repeat purchasers are extremely valuable. Bain and Company have shown that a 5% increase in retention has the potential to increase profits by up to 95%. So how do we turn one-time buyers into repeat customers? This is really important because everything we talked about, you're spending a lot of time and energy in getting your customers in the first place. You don't want to lose them after they make that first purchase. So we're going to talk a little bit about building loyalty around your brand, and I'm going to talk about Sephora. Full transparency, Sephora is not a customer of ours, but we like to talk about them because they're just a great example of someone that's doing a really good job with a loyalty program. We'll chat a little bit later with some other examples, but they believe that effective loyalty strategies are at the center of marketing, and they make that very clear. So I'm just going to chat a little bit about what they've done and how they've been successful. So with over 10 million Beauty Insider members, they're definitely doing a lot of things right. The first thing is effective use of tiers. So tiered programs are really effective when the upper tiers have a minimal amount of members, usually around 10%. So you want your most loyal customers to feel they've achieved something that others could not, and get other customers, striving to get there. Tiers can be set up based on the total spend or number of points earned. And with Sephora's program, they use the dollar amount spent within their loyalty program, both online and in store. And then, second, their rewards match the brand and customer base. So Sephora's done an excellent job aligning their rewards with what the brand stands for. They really match that look and feel of all of their marketing initiatives. So it's a high-end brand, and it's become synonymous with quality and luxury, and this is definitely reflected in what they offer in terms of customer rewards. So the rewards that a Beauty Insider can redeem with points follow the same principle. And they have created a redemption process that reflects that. Instead of using points for a discount, which you'll typically see a lot, Beauty Insider members can use their points to claim more beauty products. This is a great strategy, and if you've ever been inside a Sephora or shopped with them, earned points, at the actual store, they have a little box right next to checkout, which shows, what you can get, which also promotes products that they're selling, but they'll give you, like a little small version of it so you can try it out. And this has been very effective for Sephora. It's a really effective way to allow points to be redeemed, since discounts and coupons, those are typically not associated with a premium or luxury brand like Sephora. And so, redeeming points for a product is a better fit for them. Sephora's rewards do an amazing job of motivating customers to perform profitable actions without compromising the brand's identity. And this is what makes their rewards program, makes their rewards a key factor of driving success for the program. They also do a really great job with personalization. So they know that their shoppers are highly motivated by experience, which is clear through how they've set up their tiers and rewards. So this desire for experiences is also why they've created personalized product recommendations for Beauty Insider members. These personalized product recommendations, they're tailored to each customer based on their prior shopping history. This is obviously fantastic for regular customers, but when it comes to new shoppers or someone that's new to cosmetics, how do you do that? So they figured that out too with the beauty profile. So a shopper can simply input hair type or hair concerns, skin type, problem areas, things like that, any other information about themselves into the beauty profile. And then Sephora generates recommendations specific to your information. So, personalized products and recommendations establish a relationship with our customers that creates a positive association with Sephora brand. So not only does this motivate customers to purchase more products, and products specifically that Sephora knows that they will like, but it also gives shoppers the type of experience they need to become a brand advocate. And then finally, the program is all completely seamless between both their online shop and in store. And this is key for a company like theirs where shoppers, want their rewards to transfer both when they're in the store and online and be able to redeem in both places. Another thing that they've done well is they've expanded their program to include the social network. So they're using social to really just to get their brand out there and help spread the word. So it's funny, they've had a lot of people tweet when they reach that sort of top level, that top tier for Sephora. And there was a lot of buzz when they rolled out their tiered program around people getting access to that very top tier because they felt special and excited, like we talked about earlier. That's a really great way to motivate people. And so they've done a really good job. You can reward points through activities on social, which is just a really great way to encourage customers to engage. So now that we've looked at that larger example with Sephora, I want to dive in, and at a higher level, I want to dig in a little bit, just 5 specific ways that we recommend, moving customers from one-time buyers to repeat customers. So the first place to start is right after that first purchase is made. So you want to get that conversation started right after they make the purchase, and the best way to do this is through a post-purchase thank you email, and you want to include the personalized points available or reward available information. So these emails can be sent out of Loyalty Lion, and we also integrate with some of the best ESPs out there. So all these emails can be sent out through, if you're already using an ESP, through your ESP. Customers appreciate when you thank them and feel that personalized messages are really the most genuine. So this is a great way to follow up with them. Next, you want to continue to keep your store front of mind for your customers. So, sending an intelligently timed reminder email about the rewards they have available is key. This is another thing that you can do through Loyalty Lion, or as I said, we integrate with a lot of ESPs, so it's available through them as well. But these emails have a really high click-through rate, over 35%, which is much higher than sort of industry average. And our customers typically see about 3% of their annual revenue through these emails, which, again, you can track all of this information inside Loyalty Lion, so you can really see the value that these emails are driving for your brand. And then running limited time campaigns, so things like Double Points Weekend, is a great way to drive engagement. Consumers will increase the amount they spend in order to earn more points. And then, another interesting limited campaign you can send is you can look at referring a friend. And so you can turn that on. We've had a lot of customers that'll just turn that feature on for a certain amount of time as a marketing tactic to help acquire new customers. So you're using your most loyal customers, those brand advocates that you've built through your loyalty program, to help bring in new customers. And 100% Pure, who's a great client of ours, they use Shopify, they turn on the refer a friend feature for a week or two about once a quarter, and they typically see around $8,000 a week from the refer a friend feature. So just another interesting campaign to think about to help drive new customers through your loyalty members. And then a key way to turn one-time buyers into long-term customers is by giving bonus points to increase average order value and to drive those repeat purchases. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this, and you can set this up however you want. But for example, you could give 100 bonus points for orders over $100, or you can reward purchases that are made during a certain period of time. So a holiday like Cyber Monday sale or Christmas sale, or whatever you may want it to be, whatever lines up with the brand, but you can set sort of special promotional campaigns to run at certain times. And then finally, another key tactic is allowing for free gifts for purchases made with points. So our customer Dr. Axe does this really well through our in-cart rewards feature that makes the loyalty program just really a seamless part of checkout. So there's no need for vouchers. Shoppers just add the reward they want in one click from the cart. And this feature is designed to increase reward redemption because obviously it removes that friction and complements the normal customer journey. You don't have to copy and paste or wait for that email to come to your inbox. You can do it right there in the cart. So we've seen that customers who redeem loyalty rewards spend 2 times more. So this is really valuable. You can also offer special free gifts that can be purchased with points only, and this will really encourage them to redeem their points. Like I said, Dr. Axe is a great example of someone who's really doing this. They have a huge following in their loyalty program, and they offer really unique rewards that you can gain. And when they're trying out a new product, they'll use this as something that you can collect through rewards when you're checking out. So then when we're talking about sort of specifically moving customers that are at risk to repeat purchasers, there's a couple of things that you can do to really help turn those risk customers into repeat purchasers and bring them back, to being loyal customers. So you can give reward credits to customers who haven't shopped in a while. So, you can see that they haven't made a purchase in a long time. If they're a valuable customer, you want to get them back in the door. So you can give them a reward, right? And hopefully encourage them to come back, get your store front of mind again. This really helps you differentiate yourself from your competitors and turn someone who may be at risk into churning back into hopefully a brand advocate. And then we've talked a little bit about tiers. So tiers are a proven way to boost program engagement and increase success. You can get, your customers to perform profitable actions by incentivizing them with both intangible and tangible rewards. You can encourage engagement and delight at-risk customers by moving them up a tier, right? We talked a little bit earlier about Sephora. They do a really great job of building those tiers and building excitement around moving up a tier. Obviously, different tiers, and 100% Pure is a great example. Different tiers have different benefits, right? So, and you can set that up any way that you want. But if free shipping or there's various things that you can do. And so if you want to move them up into a tier, it gets people excited, right? And hopefully would bring them back. And then finally, you can use exclusivity. So allow for exclusive rewards through your loyalty program. Having specific items that are only available to loyalty members through points can be a great motivator. So we talked about that with Dr. Axe too. Here you can see like that travel pouch is only available as a reward that can be used through your loyalty program. So people can see that, oh, hey, if I'm a member of the loyalty program and I have X amount of points, I'm able to purchase this product. Maybe you don't allow it to be something that that can just be sold for, straight up purchase. Maybe you make it something that's unique as a reward, or if, early access to sales, things like that are other ways you can do this. So, overall, loyalty programs are a really great way to keep your customers, and, even in the case of sort of refer a friend, acquire some new ones. You can reduce churn and increase customer retention. So customer is going to earn points for a purchase or activity. They'll get an email. They'll hopefully come and claim that reward and then repeat a purchase. So it really helps you stay front of mind when they shop and gives them another reason to return. Increase customer spend. So it's proven that when redeeming rewards, you'll see a higher order value. We talked a little bit about Dr. Axe. They've seen a 36% higher average order value since starting their loyalty program. Increase engagement. You can set it up so that you can reward any beneficial on-site activity with points. Things like signups, comments, sharing of blog, anything like that. So customers can typically see 47% increase in on-site engagement. And then just, general happiness, right? You're going to make customers happy with rewards and interact with them on site. You can interact with them on site with real-time notifications, which is just a nice way. And, the Chive is a client of ours, and they have a shop called the Chivery, and they opened a blog for customers to talk about the program when they launched their loyalty program. And they had hundreds of excited comments about it, which was just really nice to see. They were making their customers were clearly looking for that, which was exciting. And then just increase acquisition, by referring a friend, by sharing on Facebook, Twitter, via email with a link. You can track that ROI end to end and just see what those brand advocates are doing for you in terms of what customers they're bringing in the door. You always trust your friend, right? So friends trust their friends and want to shop where they do. If they tell you that, if they recommend a brand to you, you're typically more likely to shop there. And that's it from me. So thanks for listening, and I'm going to pass it back for some questions.
Great. So we had one question come through. It is, how can I really maximize the value from my ads? What are some strategies outside of advertising that could help boost the lifetime value of my customers?
Okay. Well, yeah, kind of two questions. And, I think in regard to maximizing the value of your ads, a lot of what we're talking about is what Carly alluded to, and I'll let her hop in and talk about that more. I mean, once you get the person to your website, you've done what you needed to do in terms of the ad intent.
Yeah, and I think, like we talked about a little bit, personalization is really key, right? So you can see what your customers are throughout, not necessarily through Loyalty Line, but through some of the companies we integrate with, right? You can see what people are purchasing. You can make recommendations, like Sephora, I mentioned, does a really good job with that, of pulling specific data into their emails. Same thing with advertising, right? You really want to target what that customers, what they like, what they're looking for in order to get them to come back and purchase again.
Mm-hmm. And on the second part of that question, what can you do outside of advertising to, help increase lifetime value of your customers? I think a lot of that is going to pertain to, some search engine optimization techniques. So making sure you're keeping fresh, recurring content on the website and you are, creating value adds. So one of the things that we've seen actually boost a lot of our client search engine optimization on site is doing things like building out really extensive FAQ pages, and also just making sure that they're featuring, any sort of new product rollouts, changes in the industry, and things like that on their blog.
Okay. Next question. Can automation play a role in your loyalty program?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, and actually something we've been talking about a lot. I think, automation, a lot of people think of, when they think of automation, they think of marketing automation, they think of email, but it definitely plays a role in loyalty as well when you're using, especially when you're using a platform like Loyalty Line, because essentially, you can set everything up and let it run. So you can set up what activities will be rewarded and then what that reward will be. You can set up loyalty tiers like we talked about, so customers are placed into a tier either based on their total spend over the last 12 months or maybe how many points they've earned over the last 12 months, and then they'll automatically move up and down in these tiers as these numbers change. And then email, like I said, email is still an important part of automation and loyalty because there's the ability to send and set these up to trigger sort of 3 different types of loyalty related emails, including a welcome email that you'll send, set it to trigger when a new member signs up for your program. Reward available email, which we talked a little bit about, that notifies the customer when a reward becomes available, and it really just encourages them to visit and redeem that reward. And then you can also send a monthly point statement just to ensure that your shop stays on their radar. And like we talked about, integrations are key. Integrate with a lot of the e-commerce platforms, ESPs, UGC, all of that to really be able to set up a lot of automation.
Great, thank you, Carly. Our next question is, do you work with small e-commerce companies?
I can field that from the logical position side. The answer to that question is yes. I mean, we work with any and all different types of clients that are in need of PPC management or SEO or social, like I mentioned. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to being a small e-commerce company is, again, just making sure that you have enough budget available to generate a return. And so going back to those slides where we went through estimating PPC viability, as long as the budget is in step to generate, profitable results for a client, that's all we fundamentally care about is, making sure we're putting them in the best place to be successful. So for us, anything from a, one-man operation, drop shipping, all the way up to, a larger enterprise type client is definitely within our wheelhouse. And we definitely really enjoy seeing growing small business customers.
Yeah, and from the Loyalty Line perspective, it lines up really well with logical position too. We're the same way, so we can work with small business all the way up to enterprise, and we, our pricing is based on the number of orders a store has per month, so it really ranges. But definitely, like I mentioned, fast growth stores are where we work the best, and we want to see you guys grow and be successful. And so, but yeah, it's very easy to set up, fully customizable. You can white label, and it really works for a small business all the way up to an enterprise brand.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, this webinar was recorded and it'll be emailed out to you. If you have any questions about Loyalty Line or logical position, feel free to reach out to either Lindsay or Carly directly. Their contact info will be in that email as well. Have a great day.